Hey, everybody. Welcome to the fourth episode of Thrive Together, Together's first ever podcast. I'm super excited about the episode today because we're going to talk about a program and a model that I was lit on fire about as a youngster coming out of college called community schools. So today's episode is going to focus on our beloved program at Together Tumwater Community Schools and how this model and program shines a light on schools as a point and place for transformative change. I have our co-host here, Sierra, our Tumwater Community Schools director, who will be introducing herself later, and Sofia from a partner organization, Pizza Klatch. And just a reminder, my name's Megan Darrow. I'm the executive director of Together. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the host of Thrive Together. So let's just go ahead and get started because I love talking about our work. So Sierra, will you introduce yourself first?
Yes, my name is Sierra Abrams. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the director of Tumwater Community Schools.
Awesome. Good morning. So Sierra, tell us a little bit about Tumwater Community Schools and what it does for and with youth and families.
Yeah, so Tumwater Community Schools has been in the Tumwater School District for about 8 years, and we have staff embedded in the schools as staff that work with the counselors and the other support staff. They have resource centers in the schools with basic needs supplies, clothes, hygiene, food, things that students and families need in order to succeed in school and in their lives. And so we are in right now 4 of the elementary schools, a middle school, and a high school, and that has shifted and changed over the years, but we try and cover as many different ages and schools as possible, and so they work with a caseload throughout the year, trying to make sure that the families have what they need to be in school and have all the same resources as every other family.
I love it. Yeah, Tumwater Community Schools and the Community Schools model together didn't make it up. And we base our model on the National Community Schools model if you're ever interested in what that looks like. But I really do think it is a model that brings community partnerships into the school building, and our staff and Together is just the liaison to help that happen, right? So we have lots of partners that come in to help make that happen. And I've seen this work across the country in different communities, and we're so proud to be in Tumwater and partnering. So today we have a special guest who also does work in the schools and uses schools as a point of connection with youth. So Sierra, can you introduce Sofia for us?
Yes, so this is Sofia. Sofia works for Pizza Klatch, and she'll talk more about what that is, but essentially it is a support group for LGBTQ plus youth in the schools, and Sofia is a co-director of the organization, and we work collaboratively together in the schools as schools-based programs that come into the schools and partner with students and families, and we're really excited to talk today. Yeah. Do you want to say more?
Yeah, thank you all for having me. I'm so excited to be here and to talk about our work and the ways that we get to support one another while we're supporting our youth in Thurston County. So my name's Sofia. I use annual pronouns, and I am the what is my title? Programming co-director at Pizza Klatch. And I've been there for a little bit over 4 years now. Our work, as Sierra said, we run support groups in every public high school in Thurston County, as well as one middle school. And we show up during the lunch period with free pizza, and we just kind of talk about what's been going on for them that week. And Pizza Klatch has been around since 2007, so going on 15 years now, and was started as a response to a rash of suicides in the county by LGBTQ youth or those who were perceived to be LGBTQ. So a group of local therapists, counselors, school personnel, other organizations got together and we're like, this is unacceptable. What can we do? So The fall, I believe it was the fall of 2007, the first Klatch was held at North Thurston High School, which initially was actually an after-school program. But, for reasons that I'm sure we'll get into, that has its own barriers. And unfortunately, a few students were outed through that, not being able to find rides, having to talk to their parents about what they were doing after school. They're outed from that. And unfortunately, a couple of them ended up being sent to different states for conversion therapy. So really tragic beginnings. So Pizza Klatch kind of stopped to recalibrate, kind of figure what that plan of action was going to be, and then came back in the spring with the in-school, during school hours, lunchtime support groups. And yeah, since then, again, North Thurston, our first high school, and now we're in every single public high school and one middle school in the county.
Yay.
15 years later. Yeah.
I'm seeing off camera claps.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes. Great. So I have a question for both of you. We're just going to get right in it.
Yeah.
So what are some of the barriers facing students at the start of school this year that you see?
Yeah, so a huge barrier that we see in community schools in Tumwater, there's so many barriers. There's all of the basic needs that if that's not a need for you, if you have those, you're not necessarily thinking about them. Things like a stable house, food, regular meals, support from your family. And I think that's something we'll talk about in terms of Pizza Klatch support too, right? Like just feeling like you as a student are supported going to school and being who you are. And then things we're doing a lot of, buying back to school supplies, clothes for folks, because those are things that are expected, of course, to have at the start of school that not everybody can access. And so those are some really big barriers that, the schools, you need those things in order to start school successfully. And it's not something that is easy to come by in our community right now. And so we do a lot of that support of just meeting with families, figuring out what's needed, and then making those connections, like Megan said, of who can we reach out to partner with getting this resource to families and to students so they can enter school super prepared and not feel like they're starting behind already. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, and something that I've already been noticing as the beginning of the year has kind of been ramping up is a lot of our school point people, because, every single school we have a few different point people, and a lot of those folks are returning this year. So that's kind of already this built in, okay, we have to rebuild some relationships. We need to sit down. We need to understand, each of our respective responsibilities. And so there's that. And I think that is connected to a larger barrier challenge from last year, which was, it was our first full year back in the schools since COVID. And it's been really challenging. We definitely this last year, the last school year, the 21-22 year, saw more harassment and bullying than I saw in any of my other years here. And it's been really hard. And, teachers and admin are so burned out from coming back to school the last school year that I think it's affected a lot of them, and they're not coming back, which, glad that they're taking care of themselves, of course. And it means a lot for us to have really strong relationships in the schools. And not to say that we can't with whoever will be stepping in, but it's already kind of, coming into it with a few more steps that we have to do in the sort of relationship building. And that is really important because we're not there all the time. We're there in each school one day a week for the lunch period, which I don't know when you all last were in high school, but it's 25, 30 minutes. So it's we can't be there for everyone all the time. And so we really rely on those school support staff and those school support roles. So definitely seeing the the burnout, just the challenge of, especially for youth who are still in this place of, learning how to be around each other in a lot of ways.
Yes.
It's just, a lot of them have just kind of forgotten to act over COVID, and we're seeing a lot of bullying and harassment and threats, and so that's been challenging. But going into this year, hopefully starting off strong with strong connections, and so that we can build that foundation and base for the rest of the year.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, because I don't feel like people say it enough, I want to thank you both for creating space, right, for youth to have space and safety, for students who are facing marginalization in schools and in our community. I think, both of you are providing a safe place to get needs met, emotional needs met and support, and then also the basic needs. So I don't feel like we thank y'all enough. So thanks for creating that space, especially thinking about those right away as school gets started so that kids don't feel behind and so that they feel supported and safe right away. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, what you were saying, Sophia, something I didn't say is that I know Sophia because I'm also a volunteer facilitator with Pizza Klatch in Tumwater. And what I saw happening is that really strong connection of, having the community school staff come in, not just myself, but the staff that are there as well every day, and connecting with students so that there's another person that the students feel they can go to when Klatch isn't there, and just having that web of support of safe adults, someone who can, like you were saying, Megan, like create that space. And that's really the goal, is like making like little touchstones for safety for students, like as much as possible in the schools.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. So I think you have the next question.
I do. Yes. So Sophia, I have another question for you,
All
which
right.
is, I mentioned one of the biggest barriers that I know we've talked about before, and I mentioned earlier for students, is housing. And that's something that we're seeing all over, but especially in our community, that, yes, is very affecting to all of our students and families that we see. And that's something that we work really hard on in community schools, and I know in Pizza Klatch too. So I just was curious, what are your thoughts about the root causes of LGBTQ plus youth homelessness, and anything you want to say about that in your experience?
Yeah. Well, as I'm sure a lot of us know, the percentage of LGBTQ youth that make up the larger youth homeless population is staggering. It's like 40%, 41%. And, there's of course a lot of factors that go into that, but really one of the biggest ones is just at-home support, lack of home support, parents, caregivers not seeing that youth for who they are, not accepting it. And it's sort of being, sometimes it is the, big coming out, the youth gets kicked out. But more often than not, it's kind of a gradual chipping away of the quality of home life. Because, you can only deal with that for so long. And so some students make that choice on their own. Some, will, work with their parents to figure out something else. But about 33% of our own youth have either experienced homelessness or unstable housing, which is, pretty close, pretty in line with that larger national stat. So, and about 14% of them report being low income, but about 35% say that they don't know if they are or not. So those, it's pretty reflective of a lot of larger trends in this. And just not getting that support. And of course, again, a lot of them are coming from financially unstable housing, and the biggest thing is just that home support, and home support, as well as not having community support, not having resources like community schools and Pizza Klatch. And of course, not that having those is absolutely going to, we still have 33% of students that have experienced this.
Right.
But to have, again, like, I like what Sierra said about those like touchstones of safety, having a big lack of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so I want to talk a bit about the uniqueness of both of our programs, right? That we really do embed during the school day, which is really why, we're friends. That was a high five. Pizza Klatch and together. So why, I want both of you to answer this. Why are schools an important point of contact and uniquely suited for connecting students to resources and services?
Yeah, so they're uniquely suited, because that's where students are, right? Like that is where that's super accessible for them if they are going to school to have resources right there for them. And so really meeting them where they are at, right? Like that's a saying that a lot of people say, and that feels like really what community schools and Pizza Klatch both real, in those models, they're like, that's where the students are, that's where we need to be. And I think, like Sofia talked about this in terms of safety for Pizza Klatch, like having it during the school day. And I think there is some of that for community schools too, where with the older students, they don't have to make like a separate appointment and go somewhere on their own. Like they can have that like confidentiality and privacy meeting a staff that's already there in the school. And it's sometimes from there that the staff will find out what's really going on with the student and the family over a relationship that's built over time. So it might be at first like they just want to come in and get a snack and say hi. And then after, a couple weeks or so, then some things start opening up. And that wouldn't be possible if we weren't right there. And, that is that student's community, right, is their school. And so just being a part of that and something that I think about a lot why I really love community schools is because we are a part of their community. We're bringing in other community that maybe they don't have ready access to all the time in the same way as their school community. And by that way, we're able to make tiny little changes, and making that community different for them and all the other students, like even students that don't interact with us, like shifting that school to be, more accepting, have more resources, and with our work with the staff too, like when we're talking with staff about the model and our perspective, that's all important work too of like being all together in that. So
Yeah, I do love that part about this community schools model that, our staff are really coming from a community-based lens and a whole child lens, right? Like we see these kids as whole people. Not to say that there aren't staff within school buildings that are seeing that, but melding those two lenses really gives a much more holistic look at supports. Whereas, schools will identify a problem, but they're not a housing agency, right? And teachers don't know where to go for rental assistance or how to connect family to, services, let's say mental health counseling or crisis support or support as a student is exploring their identity, right? Those are all things that our staff as community-based staff, have the access to and can help build that into the school community. So I think it is just so unique and amazing that way. So Sofia, tell us a little bit about your perspective on this.
Yeah, what Sierra said about, that just being this constant presence in school, and sometimes students come and like, I just want a snack, that's it. I have also seen that so many times of like youth coming and being like, oh, I just want pizza, which like there's a, there's a little bit of balance there. Like sometimes you're like, okay, you're really just coming in to get pizza and leave or, whatever, which isn't our favorite thing. But usually you can really tell like, oh, they're here for pizza, but they're sitting here, they're like listening really intently. They're like maybe not interacting with the group very much, but they're in that space and which starts giving them that permission to start opening up. And yeah, often it takes weeks to months, but it pretty much always happens. And then, it's such a special moment where a student that has just been quiet, hasn't checked in for months is suddenly like, opens up about some big stuff, and you're like, whoa, okay, yes. Yeah, and I think, just in its best form, school should be a place like a hub of enrichment, right? And a hub of support, and a hub of everyone getting their needs met so that youth can be the most successful that they can be, which unfortunately just isn't the case all the time. And so, being able to be positioned in a school where we get to bring in other kinds of support that often just kind of fall through the cracks in schools, unfortunately. And that's that's just a system that we're working in. And to just, we're already in the schools. We, like Sierra is saying, they don't have to go anywhere. They don't have to, then there is the logistical part of that. Like, how do they get there? Do they have money for the services? If it's, something like that, if, all these things. And a lot of the kind of barrier to that too is just the sense of confidence and like self-advocacy, because that's a hard thing too, like to A, know what you need, B, know how to get it, and C, then go and do it. Like that takes a lot, like that, not just logistically, but like emotionally, and like, like I get anxious about making phone calls, and then, much less when you're like 15, 16 and have a lot of resources that you need. Like, where do you even start? And being able to be there and be really accessible, like really clear about all the things that we're able to support them with. And then helping through like groups and our facilitation, like helping build those skills and those tools of that. I mean, that's so like what we are built around is, student self-confidence and student self-advocacy and that like self power. And so, we're there to do those things, and we're like hopefully helping them grow the tools to do that for themselves as well. And I think I love the in-school model because of how many barriers it reduces. Like we see more LGBTQ youth in the county than any other youth serving organization, because we see, we're there, we're already, and we're seeing, 350 LGBTQ students and their allies a week. Like, and that just can't happen as regularly with all these other barriers that get put into place, or just, exist in general. So being able to come to them is, I think, such a great model.
Yeah. I love it. I mean, spent my whole career trying to bridge that gap between schools and community resources, because we've got to come to the kids, right? We've got to be where they're at. And schools are where they're at. Yeah. And I think having both of these resources and programs really helps them want to be there. Yes. Right. You are, I talk about this with, when I talk about our work, that, Pizza Klatch, your volunteers and facilitators and staff and the community school staff, we're definitely there to forward the school's goals. Like, we definitely fit in that, right? When kids feel more supported and valued, they are going to do better in their academics. They're going to show up to school, all of those things. But you're doing it in a way for youth that doesn't feel like you're making them do something, right? You're not there to like make them get to class or fix their schedule, right? Or whatever. You are just really there to be this magnet for them of support and relationship and community and skill building. And so it really does, I think, build safety. And I think we're better together. And I'm going to do the dang high five again because I have to, right? So it's just, I mean, I can't even say how much. When I got lit on fire about seeing this model, I actually came to the Tumwater community while I was living in Seattle and did a presentation at a Kiwanis club in Tumwater about community schools. And this is before I ever even talked to Together or knew about Together. And Kiwanis was like, well, how do we get it to Tumwater? And I was like, I don't know, get me to move here or something. And so I moved here, and that's what we're doing. Not that I was like, oh, so now I made it happen. I certainly did not make it happen. It was a lot of people, but I just think that model is so important and cool. And actually, it's getting a lot of national attention right now. Community schools model is getting a lot of national attention, and the feds are like, oh, maybe we should be funding this. And I'm like, yeah, hello. It's been going on forever, but the world is, all this work is circular, and they're starting to see how transformative it can be to have community-based partners in the building to remove those barriers. So yes. So I'm going to ask a question that I ask every guest, which is, what does building community as an act of resistance mean to you, Sophia?
I love that question. I love the question because it can just be so many things. Like, what is community? What is resistance? There's just so much that you can tease out in those things. We could do an entire other podcast, I'm sure, just simply on that question.
Yes, we could.
Building community as an act of resistance. I think that in, this culture that we're living in, there is a lot of pressure to be individualistic and to, it's every man for himself. And I am definitely using gendered terms as a purposely here, because that's the general, the vibe, is every man for himself. Like, relationships are fleeting. They're not, all you have is yourself. Like, you got to take care of yourself. And that, if that was actually true, humans wouldn't be here anymore. We need each other. We need interdependent relationships. We heal through our relationships and in community and in practice. None of this stuff happens in a vacuum, right? Like, it is all interdependent and relationship based.
Yes.
And I mean, that shouldn't be an act of resistance, right? Like, but it is in our current culture. It is an act of resistance to, build cultures and communities of support in the face of a society that says that it's, everyone's out there on their own and, just pulling yourself up by your bootstraps and none of that is true. So it does feel like an act of resistance because we're fostering those connections that are then going to go on to, inform the way that our culture functions, and it needs to be relationship based. So building those communities, and of course, we could get into the semantics of like what community is and is it even real? But it is I see the youth like building their own community all the time and supporting each other. And again, like, we can't be there all the time. We're there for a very short amount of time, and being able to see the youth. I mean, honestly, 80% of the time a student comes forward with something that they're struggling with, an issue, like a challenge, we always give it over to the students first. Like, again, like really trying to foster that sense of self-advocacy and support of one another. And 80% of the time, all the students say stuff that like any of the facilitators would say.
Right. Yeah.
And that's what we want, right? Because again, we're not there all the time. And to be able to provide a space where they can kind of practice that like relationality and that communication, I think is really powerful.
Yes.
Because that doesn't end at Klatch either. It goes out, and they continue to support each other, and they continue to help each other build that base, which again, relationality is an act of resistance in our current culture. So that's
Love
what
it.
I think.
That's why I asked the question, and we could clip all of the answers together into its own podcast. Yes, I love it. But I hear this thread of healing through our episodes so far, and you talked about healing, and that we can't heal without community, and that's what we need. And I see Pizza Klatch, facilitating that for youth and facilitating community for youth, and it's a beautiful thing. So
Yeah. And I think just following through on that, like, I think you kind of already started talking about this with the way that the youth build community with each other. And I definitely saw that in the group I was co-facilitating. And that, gave me hope for youth. And, sometimes it can feel really hard when you're seeing all of the barriers and all of the struggles. But I'd love to hear what else gives you hope in your work and in the world at large.
Yeah, I mean, definitely seeing the youth just like show up to each other super hard. Like, my God, they're like so much better adjusted than I ever was as youth, or like at least more like, emotionally in tune and can like kind of speak to that. And I mean, again, that gives me a lot of hope because like that's relationality and support and like emotional connection is really the stuff that life is made of. And that gives me a lot of hope, seeing the ways that youth are really active in social justice movements and the way that they self-organize. And, they're just this last winter, there was a number of student protests against like sexual assault and racism and transphobia in the schools. And all those walkouts were student-led. And even in the face of admin threatening disciplinary action, they still did it. And that is incredibly inspiring to me, like gives me so much hope. Just the youth they're on it.
Yeah.
They're doing some really cool stuff and have a lot of power. And I think that they're realizing that, which is also its own hope.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great. Thank you. So how can people best support the work of Pizza Klatch, Sophia?
There's definitely a few ways. Of course, donations are always needed. You can go to pizzaklatch.com and there's a little button for donating. There's also a text number that you can text, which I should have written down / should remember what it is. But you can do a text. I think it's 9199. But need to double check on that. And being a board member is definitely a big help for us. And of course, as Sierra knows, sitting and volunteering and being a facilitator with us. It's generally, like a 1-year commitment, not necessary, but that's ideal. But yeah, definitely getting some facilitators in there to give youth the sort of breadth of experience of all the different ways that it might look like to be a LGBTQ adult. Because it's hard to see past high school sometimes.
Yeah.
Those are, volunteering and board member and donating definitely are. Oh, we also have a gala in the spring and are always looking for like raffle items, volunteers for that. We're going back to in-person this year for the first time since pandemic. So we'll be needing some more feet on the ground to make that happen. But yeah.
Awesome. And Sierra, how about for Tumwater Community Schools?
Yeah. So what I would highlight for Tumwater Community Schools right now is we have this fund at Together called the SWIFT Fund, which is named after Together's founder. And that is for emergency needs. And so it's really helpful to have a fund that's discretionary, that we can use for whatever the families and students need, which we have specific funds for rental assistance and some other specific needs, but, sometimes there's a car repair or, someone's house flooded, like things that are incredibly important, but we don't always have that money available. So it's super helpful to just be able to fill those gaps with emergency funding. So I would say that would be amazing. So you can go to our website and donate to that, or you can reach out to me. We can figure that out. And that's really, really helpful emergency funds for the families.
Yeah. I love it. Shout out to Erla Swift, our founder. So exciting. She doesn't like public accolades, but I just did it. So thanks, both of you. I love the asks. And I want to thank a couple of key partners, too, and funders of Tumwater Community Schools. One, of course, is the Tumwater School District. They've been our ride or die partner in this work and allow us, to be in their schools and do this work together. They are incredible partners. We've had ups and downs with finances and staffing, and we're proud to work with them. And then the city of Tumwater is another really key partner and funder for us. They are always listening to the needs of the community from our perspective and our clients' perspective, and we couldn't do that work without them. So thank you. They've also been funders of immense amount of rental assistance, especially through the pandemic, which was incredible for our community. And for our staff to have access to it. And there's, of course, tons of other partners that we could thank, but, those are the two that I want to highlight today. So I want to thank you, Sophia, for being here today and for having coffee on the couch at Thrive Together and talking about community as an act of resistance and the rad work that you're doing. And of course, Sierra, for being an amazing director. She is a blessing to our work and to the Tumwater community. And of course, to the audience, I hope our building audience who's listening, for getting through some of the kinks in the beginning, but I feel like we're in a groove. So we hope to have you listening next time.